Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the show. I am Samikis Matthews. I am a Mocktor, not a doctor, no credentials, no degree, just 53 years of experiencing and seeing some things, but I do have a PhD in keeping it real. So let's get into it, and I hope you enjoy this Mocktor's appointment. Today we are talking about grown-up kids, our grown-up adult children, and leaving the house. And that is one of the hardest things for a mother. By the way, guys, I got these new little, I really wasn't sure about buying, a top of the line, podcast microphone for this channel yet, because I don't even know if anybody's going to care what I got to say. So but I did get these because I was realizing that when I was talking on the videos before, it was very echoey. So this is supposed to help with that. And there's some kind of technology, I don't know what it's called or what the name of it is, but it's supposed to be better for the echo. So anyway, I am a mother and I have 4 children, and they're on their own pretty much. And I say pretty much because we have kind of a compound. Well, not right. I've got 3 boys, and 2 of them I live on that same property with. So I kind of have it good. A lot of people are really jealous of me, moms who just really love their children and love being with their children and being around their children so much. I got it really, really, really good out there with them. But for the most part, when our kids leave home, that's a very, very hard thing for moms. And because they miss their children so much. And there's also this, aspect of, now they're busy and they don't have time for you. And they're not at your beck and call anymore the way that they used to be. And you call and they don't answer, or, they have their job now and they have their lives. And that is a dynamic that takes some time, because for all these years, you've had your children in your home, and, you were the person that they came to for everything. They talked to you when, they were teenagers about their girlfriend or their broken hearts or their friendships or their fights with their friends at school or how mad they are at the teacher. I mean, every single thing, because every day they come home to you. And you have this wonderful privilege that you really just don't realize how wonderful it is until they're gone. But you have this wonderful privilege of being in their presence every single day and getting this, it's this gift, and when they're gone, you just miss it so much. You just miss being with those kids. And, I think the dads are better with it, but I know for moms it's very, very, very difficult. There's a lot of feelings going on there. And it's hard to handle. So, if you've got adult children and they're brand new leaving the house, this is for you. And it's for you because I think, we've been the mom, we've been in charge all these years, and your role changes. You're still their mother, but you're not their mother in that same way where they have to listen to you, or, you tell them how to do things and, they do it the way you say because you're their mom and they trust you. When they grow up, and I think it's funny because boys are, I don't know, my boys have been saying, I'm a man since they're like 5 years old. So when boys get older and they're men, they have this, I I make my own decisions. I'm a man, That comes on. I think daughters are still very, very connected to their mother and emotionally. And, Mom, how'd you do this? And how'd you do that? When boys get a little bit older, they come back around because they realize maturity isn't, I'm a man. They realize maturity is, I still come back to my mom and connect. And I'm mature enough to realize that she knows, she has more experience than me. They'll do that. But you lose a lot of that when they move. You lose the influence that you have on them and the decisions that they make. And that can be very, very hard because sometimes they don't make the right decisions and you got to kind of watch them make mistakes and mess things up and not be angry and say, see, I told you, because if you do that, they don't come back and confide anything in you, So that's very, very difficult. And just having, you really miss when when your kids come over after adults. Isn't it amazing how that feels? It's like you're all, you have dinner all together and you haven't seen each other in a while and you're all under the same roof for a few hours and it's like the best feeling ever. And it doesn't happen very often because everybody's on different schedules. And when it happens, it's like, and you just love the time. But, it's a different, it's a different time of life. And when they get married as a mother, you even take more of a back seat because now they have their spouse. And you don't have you have even less access to them because, now they have this full-time person in their life. And that can be very, very hard, especially if your children get married very young. You haven't had a lot of time to adjust to them being on their own. And now they have a spouse. And you're trying to navigate that relationship with your children while also being respectful of, the spouse's time and, and I think for boy moms, it's really hard too because, the girls tend to stay with their mother's side a lot more. And, the boys tend to go where the wives want to go because that's what they do. They want to make their wives happy, and so they do that. And you see them doing things in their life, and you have to bite your tongue. And when it's brand new, you don't bite your tongue because you're used to speaking your mind to your children and them listening to you. And you have had this, way that it is. Moms are kind of like, they're the ones, right? They're the ones that have the responsibility of telling the kids what's right and what's wrong. And then all of a sudden, you got to get used to not doing that. But it's very hard when you've been doing it for 20 years. So it takes some time. And if you're a kid who's just recently moved out and you stumbled across this video or wanted to watch it, try to understand your parents because it is hard. I mean, you're out on your own and you're so happy to be out on your own and you're just enjoying your freedom and you're enjoying your independence, and that's all wonderful and everything. It is. It's so wonderful. But your parents aren't that happy about it. They're missing you. They're worried sick. They're terrified because this world's a trip, right? It's a crazy place. And so parents are just constantly worrying, are you okay? You didn't call me. You told me you were going to go out with friends last night. You need to let me know where you're at. And that can all be very pestering to a young adult. That can be very, very annoying. And I said before, when your child gets married, it adds an extra layer. But I'll tell you something that it does do, especially for boys, is when they get married, it kind of keeps them home more because the wife is like, So it's a protection. Like you're kind of glad for that kind of protection too, because they're not going out as much. But for kids who are kind of going through that thing, or parents who are having a hard time because their kids are kind of like, Mom, lay off, they come back around, number one. And number two, be patient with yourself. And I know they're going to get angry with you, but don't be so hard on yourself, because you have to relearn this new way. I mean, it's a new experience for us too. Our kids are leaving the house. I mean, of all the things I heard about parenting, nobody prepares a mother for that. Nobody prepares a mother for when their children leave the house. And it comes so fast, and you're never ready for it, because like I said, there's a safety aspect. There's the I miss you aspect. There's the aspect of like, hey, you're doing this. That's not the best choice. And you just have to sit back. All that stuff takes time. Nobody learns that kind of stuff overnight. And so there's a lot of friction between there's a lot of bumping of the heads between the parent and the child, because the kid wants to just be left alone, and the mother doesn't want to leave him alone. Excuse me, now this piece up. So that's a very different thing. And then you get grandkids, and I have 5 grandkids, and sometimes you don't like when the parents are disciplining them, or sometimes you want them to discipline them about something that they think that they should be disciplining them, and or sometimes you're saying, no, I don't want them to have this, or I don't want them to watch that, and you're like, what's the big, And as the grandparent, you want to just be the fun person and give them everything that they want, but you have to also respect the parent, and a lot of parents have a really hard time. They're like, that's my grandkid, and I don't have to, I'm going to give it to them, even if their parent doesn't want them to have it. And when you do that, your child may be ready to forgive you a lot faster than the spouse. And you might say, well, I don't care if she's mad at me, or I don't care if he's mad at me. But, you got to remember that your kid has to go home with them. And so it's better to keep it to where your child has peace, because they're in a very vulnerable, parents can cause a lot of unnecessary arguments between, your married children and their spouse, because the spouse doesn't feel respected, or, the spouse doesn't feel like it's your place. And it's really not. I know they're your grandkids, and you love them just as much as your children. And you would never do anything to harm them. You would only do the best for them. And you've got someone telling you, they feel like your children. And you've got someone telling you, no, these are my kids. And they're absolutely right. It's their kids. You may not agree with how they're raising them. You may think they're doing things wrong. But spouses have a lot of power. And sometimes spouses aren't emotionally mature, and they have a lot of power. And they can make it difficult for you to see those grandkids, or even for you to see your child, because they won't have peace. Your kid won't have peace if they come around, So you have to be very, very, very careful and respectful. It really is respect. Part of that as a parent is letting go, because you still feel like, that's my kid. Yes, it's your kid. But they aren't under your rulership anymore. They aren't under your rulership. They are living their lives, they're grown, and they will always be your baby, but they're not a baby. Okay? To someone else, they're a spouse, and they're not, if the spouse is not emotionally mature, they're going to make it very, very difficult for them. So you don't want to, and it's very hard to reel it back in once, you've let it go. So, but I understand, parents, it's so hard. It's so hard. Tell me what you think. I'm real curious, like, what your issues have been. Have you had issues, or if you've got great advice that you've, made it a success with your in-laws and your kid, and, they come around a lot. Sometimes people aren't raised in the same kind of home as you, and they don't agree with the way you do things, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be the same. We just have to respect the way each other does things in their household, and try to get along for the sake of your child, right? Because you want them to have a happy life. If you're making the spouse mad every time they come over, your son or daughter's not having a happy life, because they're going to have to hear it. So, I don't know. Tell me what you think, guys. I miss my babies being babies. And somebody said something to me recently, or I heard it somewhere. I think I heard it somewhere. I can't remember. But probably Instagram or something. But when you have, it's for siblings, but it totally is the same for parents too. There's a day that's coming for everyone who still has their kids at home, when it's the last day that you will all be under the same roof at the same time, and you don't even realize what's happening. You're all sitting there watching TV, your kids got their bags packed, and the kids don't even realize, wow, in 10 years, it's like we're going to look back on this day and go, I remember when Marissa moved out, or, I remember when Bill moved out. It's surreal then, but at the moment, you don't even realize it's happening, that it's the last day you're going to be together. And try not to take those years for granted. I saw a mother in the store the other day, and her boys were like in the grocery aisle, and they're like fighting, they're like doing all this with each other, and they're doing it with their mom, and they're like, smacking her on the face, or they're not hitting her, but they're acting like, they're shadow boxing with her and stuff, and she's like pushing her cart, and she's rolling her basket, and she's so irritated. This poor mom, she probably has to still go home and cook dinner. She probably cooked all day. But I tell you what, I told her, I said, you're going to miss that. And it's hard for you to imagine at the time, because you're so tired and they're so annoying. But man, you miss it when they're gone. Tell me you don't. If you've got kids that moved out, every mother knows you're going to miss that when they're gone. So enjoy your kids, guys, and, keep them as close as you can for as long as you can. Maintain those good relationships with those in-laws for the grandchildren's sake and for your kids' sake, so the family could stay together. And I can't write prescriptions, but your prescription is your homework, your prescription, your therapy, whatever you want to call it. It's to stop and think before you speak, so that your kids can have a good life, a healthy life, a happy life. And like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you want to talk about next. Let me know what you think of what I'm saying. Let me know if you have any better advice than the Mocktor here. And share it down below, because, you know, we're all learning here. And this is good stuff. Life is good when we work hard to keep our relationships good. So let me know what you think. Again, like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you for your next appointment.